Before I get to baseball news, some other stories that I've been promising you. Yes, Jessie Altman. You know who he is? He was, you probably don't. I mean, this is why I'm not real big on recruiting news, okay? I mean, it's always, they're getting a 5-star athlete. You never know if they're going to be a 5-star athlete. In the case of Jessie Altman, he's a 3-star defensive line prospect from Alabama, and I don't think he's going to make it. And you know why? Because he's up for murder. Defensive tackle from Etowah High, one of 3 teenagers arrested yesterday and charged with capital murder. The Gadsden Times reports Altman is one of 5 young men charged in connection with the killing of Aaron A.J. Huff, shot in his car on January 4th after what police described as an altercation with one of the other teenagers charged in the killing. Altman, 6'1", 285 pounds, ranked the 22nd ranked player among class 2019 players from Alabama, 40th ranked defensive tackle in the country, has received some interest, no scholarship offers yet, from the likes of not only Alabama, but Florida State, South Carolina, and Oregon. Perhaps, thankfully, not a local school. I don't know, would you call South Carolina a local school or Alabama? Yeah, no, probably not. Speaking of this, I guess there's talk now Quay Walker may be decommitting from Alabama. He was a 4-star linebacker, another big-time player out of what has become the most fertile state in producing football players, and that's Georgia. Georgia had 29 players. I'm talking the state of Georgia, not necessarily the Bulldogs or all that, but all players, native Georgians. I mean, this Josh Dobbs, for instance, is a native Georgian, so he would have created this. In last year's NFL draft, 29 players drafted out of the state of Georgia. Most in the country. You would have thought California because of the population, or Florida because of the reputation, for that matter, maybe Texas. But no, it was actually Georgia, the most players drafted in the NFL. That's impressive, and that's also why I think the Georgia Bulldogs have such a bright future. It's also why why I would be a little, I don't know, a guy comes from Georgia, he must automatically be good. Here's a man from the Dominican Republic, he must absolutely be able to play baseball. Well, but Quay Walker is supposed to visit Tennessee. He was supposed to go to Alabama, but you know what? The Tennessee Volunteers hired the defensive coordinator from Alabama to be their head coach. You may have heard of him. His name is Jeremy Pruitt. And as a result, so Quay Walker, obviously a guy that Pruitt was heavily vested in before. Hey, come to me to Tennessee. Got a better chance to play. So he'll visit Knoxville this weekend. And we'll see what Alabama would come out and all that. He's been committed to play for the Crimson Tide since June of last year. But the fact that he's still taking visits wasn't an early commit. The commit is still open. He is the number 3 outside linebacker prospect, according to 24/7, 65th overall prospect. Okay. However, here's the big if. This is going to come down, if Tennessee gets him, to how much does Walker like Jeremy Pruitt, and how much does he value playing, presumably right away, as compared to, well, shall I say, winning. And what kind of a sales job Pruitt gives on Walker, because Tennessee's got some pretty fair competition. Not just Alabama. And I would think that if it's Alabama, that the reason why you would say, no, I don't want to play for Alabama, 2 reasons. One is just Nick Saban. I mean, you were being recruited by Pruitt, and, okay, maybe you'll shelter me from Saban's surliness. You don't know who you're getting now in the case. That's one thing. But if you're interested in playing at winning program, well, Georgia is still in the mix. So is Auburn, Florida, and then Tennessee as well. And still Alabama. I mean, he's still verbally committed to the Crimson Tide. But a 4-star linebacker, pretty good outside linebacker prospect. Maybe Jeremy Pruitt, and he was the guy, had to be the guy that was recruiting him in the first place, might be able to lure him to Knoxville. If he does, I'm going to feel a lot better about Pruitt's chances in Knoxville. If he doesn't, just what I say before, major rebuilding, probably more of the same in 2018 this year as there was last year. I mean, I've just said, players that impressed me on the Vols coming up, well, you got Ty Chandler and you got Trey Smith, and that's about it. One guy who really impressed me when he played college football was Marcus Lattimore, great running back at South Carolina. Unfortunately, the Tennessee Volunteers did a number on his knee in 2013, and it ended his football career. He did get a little bit of money because he was drafted by the 49ers, but he never played for him. He has been hailed as the poster child of why one needs to pay the players. Although I still say, college football, what salaries do we really expect these guys to make? That's what we really have to start wondering. I mean, do you really think that a Marcus Lattimore is going to make $1 million a year playing for the South Carolina Gamecocks? I don't think it's going to work out that way. One of the things that happens is that players of his caliber usually will take out insurance policies. And I've talked about this, so that if you do have the career-ending injury, you will get several $1 million. I know there's a lot of talk of taxes take up a lot of that. What don't taxes take up? But there's usually $1 million insurance policies, so that if this happens, you can still collect something. And Peyton Manning had one when he returned to Tennessee. I've actually talked to Archie about it. I once talked to Tommy Maddox, who left for the NFL early, and it didn't work out well for him. And he actually said, if I could have done it all over again, I probably would have stayed. And I asked about, what about the insurance policy? And he said, yeah, I did have one. And, I mean, he had one when he was a sophomore. Kind of saw that, Tommy Maddox, that's a guy who could play in the pros. You want to insure your investment here, If you're drafted as an NFL quarterback, you're standing to make millions, so you might want to be insured for millions as well. Anyway, I've mentioned this, but the interesting thing, Marcus Lattimore, he was a football coach at a place called Heathwood Hall, which I presume to be a school of some sort, but he will now work as a spiritual advisor chaplain for the South Carolina Player Development Department. Marcus Lattimore. I've never even heard of the spiritual advisor chaplain in the Player Development Department. That's kind of interesting, though, isn't it? However, as I said, it is a high school, incidentally. Marcus Lattimore also established the Marcus Lattimore Foundation. He runs a lot of football camps and seminars designed at making a difference in young athletes, and now he's going to be the chaplain. It's kind of interesting, of the South Carolina Gamecocks. I hope he comes off better than the chaplain from North Dallas 40. Remember that? Just stumbling around through the locker room, Let us give praise to the owner for all that he has given us and all that. And meanwhile, the players are back there, snickering and saying, is this guy serious? Is he really? Come on now. This is a bit absurd what he's talking about. Okay. I did want to talk about baseball a little bit. Gerrit Cole is the star pitcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's been shopped around by the Pittsburgh Pirates, who appear to be in rebuilding mode, although the Pirates are trying to trade away their veterans, and they can't get anything for them. How long has Andrew McCutchen been on the block? And he's still in Pittsburgh. Well, now, all right, Gerrit Cole, during this show yesterday, supposedly was traded to the Astros. Now this is called a false rumor No deal, everything but fake news. What's going on here? You may ask. Heck, I'd like to know myself. Well, here's the case with Gerrit Cole. He's under contract with the Bucks, with the Pirates until 2019. But, yeah, for whatever reason, fairly cost, the Bucks want to trade him. Now, in December, it looked like he was going to be dealt to the Yankees. That didn't happen yesterday. The Astros, two teams that figure, as they did last year, to contend for the American League Championship. But now it doesn't mean that something won't happen in the future, but the Astros, they're saying, would rather trade for Cole, who's 27, with a 2-year contract, so they have a little bit, if he's the slumps, they wouldn't have to re-sign him, they wouldn't have to, pay big bucks. Then re-sign Yu Darvish, whose stats, not the best last year, all things considered. But he's 31 and Darvish wants a 5-year deal. So do you want a player who's coming into his prime, or do you want someone who wants 5 years in his 30s and big bucks at that? Cole's lifetime ERA is .350, which I honestly thought was a little bit high. A couple of years ago, he was 4th in the Cy Young Award voting, lifetime .426 ERA. He's a fine pitcher. I once, when I was a cab driver, actually took his parents to the ball game. And when he played at UCLA, his second baseman, a guy named Eddie Murray, was the second baseman of the Alexandria Aces baseball team that I called play-by-play for. But no, whatever team that Cole lands with, if he does land with the Yankees or the Astros, these teams figure to have monster pitching staffs. Absolute monster pitching staffs that you just can't see them going wrong this upcoming season. They would absolutely, and whoever would get Cole, I would think would be the team to beat in the American League. Maybe the Indians would look at, I don't know. Do you hear the Mets almost got Jason Kipnis? Try to give you more baseball news as it comes along. A couple of weeks I'll be voting for the Hall of Fame. I've got actually the chances, it is said, of all 33 people on the ballot. It looks good for there to be, they say this could be the year where there are more people who are inducted into Cooperstown in one time than any year since the museum opened in 1936. 5 guys in the initial Hall of Fame class. There could be 5 or even more this year. That's what the projections are. And a lot of sports writers are out there, giving what their ballot is and such. I think we may see very shortly the ball player who gets 100% of the vote. Right now, the highest percentage for getting a Hall of Fame, but just under 100%, 99%, was Ken Griffey Jr. You start asking yourself, how did Babe Ruth not get 100%? How did Hank Aaron not get 100%? And it comes down to, and these are written by writers, and a lot of times that you'll get writers who didn't like an athlete for whatever reason, and they won't vote for him. But when the ballot was silent, you could get away with doing that. Now that it is going to be made public, yeah, you do now have to, if somebody leaves off an outstanding player, he has to explain why. I remember Mike Downey once wrote that, Lou Brock didn't get 100% of the vote. He says, who doesn't vote for Lou Brock? Why would you make the argument that Lou Brock is not a Hall of Famer? Please, would somebody explain this to me? Has the record for most stolen bases. Ricky Anderson broke it, but how does that not, get your Hall of Fame vote? He had a point. And, hey, for power, I struck out a little bit too much, but okay, so what? Everybody makes outs. The idea was... And now I think you'll see less and less of that because you're not going to be able to get away with leaving a player like a Lou Brock or, whoever off the ballot. There just is going to be too much concern about that. This is WEMB Irwin, 1420 NBC Sports Radio, Tri-Cities.